Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Starchild podcast. I'm Starchild, your host. Today, we are obviously going to be talking about coronavirus, since it is sweeping the globe and now the United States, including my city, Seattle, which, like New York and California, are the epicenter states for this virus. Washington State, California, and New York. Are in basically total lockdown. I'm walking the streets of Seattle and I see probably 30% of storefronts putting boards over the windows. I really hope that this is just a 2-week social distance policy, just to curve the virus spread, which I think is a really good thing, the right thing to do. And in that meantime, people are out of work and at home with their families, not a whole lot to do. So these are the times in history that we really have to be smarter than ever and have a plan for ourselves, right? And really support each other, because that's the winning strategy. Panicking is never a winning strategy. So we just have to be smart and diligent and persevere. That's the winning strategy moving forward. So if people just obey the social distance policies for 2 weeks, then we can go back to living somewhat normal lives. Now, the markets are crashing simultaneously, which will definitely have a long-term effect. And I've been watching several economists and their take on the coming months. And it looks like this first round of quantitatively easing from the federal government, $1,000 to households, is just going to be the first round of quantitative easing. I'm with Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang and those minded type people that suggest UBI, Universal Basic Income, and I think that's a good policy. Probably start at $1,000 and work the payments up to $2,000 a month, until we have a vaccine to handle the spread of this virus, because I think it's just gonna bounce around the globe until a vaccine is made, unless it just goes away like H1N1 did. But H1N1 infected like 700 million people, and COVID-19 is more deadly than H1N1, and so we cannot allow it to infect that many people. That would result in millions of deaths. That's worst case scenario, though. With social distancing done right, we can help curb down the spread of the virus. But economically, people are really hurting in the short term right now. They need that $1,000 yesterday. Today's the March 22nd, 2020. They needed that check yesterday as soon as possible. That's not coming for another week or so, week and a half, in early April, and then another check in May. And so I suggest what they're probably going to do is several rounds or more of quantitatively easing with these direct stimulus checks, as well as bailing out industries and the banks once again, just like in the 2008 recession, but this is going to cost twice as much. So I'll play a clip of Ray Dalio on CNBC.
I want to emphasize that we're in an economic downturn, a crisis that has a health part of it, has an economic part of it, has a monetary part of it, and we're hitting zero interest rates. So what you're seeing right now, very classic, is the inability of central banks to stimulate monetary policy in the way that is normal. In other words, in a regular cycle, they push the button, poof, and they stimulate and give people credit. And people with money and credit, they go out and spend more and they pick up the economy. But the capacity to do that when you hit the zero interest rate floor and when monetization doesn't work anymore, because pushing interest rates will not push bond yields down. Buying bonds will not push bond yields down. And then you have the loss of interest rate declines, the loss of getting money to the people who need it through quantitative easing. When that doesn't work anymore, then you are in the position now. So very classically, right here now, what you have is the federal government, which does not have the capacity to make money and credit. You have them coming in and spending a lot more money, not nearly enough money. We estimate right now that the corporate losses would be in the vicinity of, in the U.S., about $4 trillion. Globally, probably about $12 trillion.
Say that again, $4 trillion in the United States, $12 trillion globally? That's with a T?
That's right. So the
worldwide recession, they're saying
there'll be big losses. And those are corporations. There'll also be individuals who have very big losses.
Not just the corporate debt.
And individuals who can't afford the shock that they're going to have. So there's a need for the government to spend more money, a lot more money. And where do they get
how much more money, Ray?
Well, we're going to have to, it depends on whether it's provided as loan guarantees or credits or something along those lines. I would say somewhere in the vicinity of $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion is a minimum. And what that means, where does the government get the money? Okay, who are the lenders now?
Recession.
Everybody's almost hit. And
$4
so
trillion corporate debt, $2
the way
trillion,
this works, the way it's worked in history, is that they have to get the money from the Federal Reserve. So you are in a moment in time right now. You're seeing it play out. It's played out in history. It's played out in the 1930s, in which you're now seeing we're going to spend a lot of money on these programs. That means you're going to have to sell a lot of bonds. Okay, who is going to buy those bonds? A lot of people are going to be broke. A lot of, if you look at the condition of pension funds or other endowments, so where's that money going to come from? As in history, that money will have to come from the Federal Reserve. So you see it right now. When you see a big program being announced, like that program, you see the bond yields back up. Now, if the central bank does not then go in there and buy those bonds, and the central bank at this point is in a dilemma. And what should happen with interest rates and so on? If those rates back up because the supply-demand imbalance is not good, then you're going to have the next wave of the crisis, because interest rates rising will cause asset prices to go down more again. And they also will mean that debt squeezes will be a problem, and also credit spreads would widen. This is just mechanics.
So he's saying that interest rates are going to continue to go down. They're lowering them down to zero. And then after that period, they're going to raise interest rates, which is going to squeeze asset prices. Now, this is his video of what to do during times like these, during an economic crisis, because it's inevitable that this recession could very well turn into a Great Depression. And so what to do in a situation like this is a combination of monetary and
policy.
policy.
A deleveraging can be ugly or it can be beautiful. How can a deleveraging be beautiful? Even though a deleveraging is a difficult situation, handling a difficult situation in the best possible way is beautiful. A lot more beautiful than the debt-fueled, unbalanced excesses of the leveraging phase. In a beautiful deleveraging, debts decline relative to income, real economic growth is positive, and inflation isn't a problem. It is achieved by having the right balance. The right balance requires a certain mix of cutting spending, reducing debt, transferring wealth, and printing money so that economic and social stability can be maintained.
So we need a combination of monetary
People
and
ask
fiscal
if
policy,
printing money
not
will
just,
raise
printing
inflation.
from the Federal Reserve.
It won't if it
That will-
offsets falling
that will
credit.
make inflation
Remember,
out of control.
spending is what matters. A dollar of spending paid for with money has the same effect on price as a dollar of spending paid for with credit. By printing money, the central bank can make up for the disappearance of credit with an increase in the amount of money. In order to turn things around, the central bank needs to not only pump up income growth, but get the rate of income growth higher than the rate of interest on the accumulated debt. So what do I mean by that? Basically, income needs to grow faster than debt grows. For example, let's assume that a country going through a deleveraging has a debt-to-income ratio of 100%. That means that the amount of debt it has is the same as the amount of income the entire country makes in a year. Now think about the interest rate on that debt. Let's say it's 2%. If debt is growing at 2% because of that interest rate, and income is only growing at around 1%, you will never reduce the debt burden. You need to print enough money to get the rate of income growth above the rate of interest. However, printing money could easily be abused because it's so easy to do and people prefer it to the alternatives. The key is to avoid printing too much money and causing unacceptably high inflation the way Germany did during its deleveraging in the 1920s. If policymakers achieve the right balance, a deleveraging isn't so dramatic. Growth is slow, but debt burdens go down. That's a beautiful deleveraging. When incomes begin to rise, borrowers begin to appear more creditworthy. And when borrowers appear more creditworthy, lenders begin to lend money again. Debt burdens finally begin to fall. Able to borrow money, people can spend more. Eventually, the economy begins to grow again, leading to the reflation phase of the long-term debt cycle. Though the deleveraging process can be horrible if handled badly, if handled well, it will eventually fix the problem. It takes roughly a decade or more for debt burdens to fall and economic activity to get back to normal, hence the term lost decade.
Okay, so a lot to unpack right there. So what he's saying is that we're approaching the end of the long-term debt cycle, which is roughly 100 years long, and we have a recession roughly 5 to 10 years within that span of time, and at the end of the long-term debt cycle is typically a deleveraging period or a depression, where the central bank has to print. He's saying $4 trillion for corporate debt and $2 trillion for direct stimulus. So that's a $6 trillion bailout, which is definitely going to increase inflation. And so he's saying that they're going to lower interest rates essentially down to zero, potentially negative. I don't know. That's been done in Japan and sometimes it works. But on top of that, after that period of lowering interest rates, but when the Federal Reserve gives money to the big banks to lend out, that money is at 0%. After that time period, interest rates are going to rise by a lot, I guess. That's what he's saying. So asset prices will go down, meaning real estate and other things, their prices will probably go down in certain areas. Probably cities will be hit the hardest. And during this time period, it's very chaotic, I understand, and that's why you have to be smart and diligent and weigh the costs and benefits of what this time period is. And so if you're fortunate enough to be able to stay at home and just hang out and try to be creative as possible, and at the same time weigh the costs and benefits of the short term and long term, because I think the long term looks a lot better than the short term. I know the short term seems very bleak and chaotic, which it is, but if done right, I think we will come out of this a lot closer and more appreciative of things that we took for granted previously. So let's look at the numbers of coronavirus. This is my favorite website to track it, ncov2019.live. That's ncov2019.live. This was created by a high schooler here in Seattle. It's tracking most of the globe, United States, Europe, and China, and Canada, Australia, and Latin America. Total, we have 333,000 total confirmed cases, with 14,000 deceased, with almost 100,000 recovered. So a little under a third has recovered. So that's good news. The scary thing about these numbers is they can rise exponentially, especially with it being global at this point. It's not contained to just one country or region. It's global, and so I see this either bouncing around countries worldwide for a while until a vaccine is created, or it does just fizzle out, hopefully, with proper policies like self-quarantine and social distancing for 2 weeks to a month. I think with that, we can come out of this all right, and more appreciative of one another, because there's a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck, and they're really hurting and wondering what they're going to do in the future right now. So I think direct stimulus, UBI, universal basic income, is the right move. Crank it up to $2,000 a month until a vaccine is created. And then once people get treatment, and then start to lower those payments back down to $1,000. And the benefits that we might see out of this are people actually kind of taking a step back and taking a different approach to their lives, rather than just work without kind of any forethought of what life should really be about. When work gets canceled, it kind of forces you to reassess our game plan for life, which is not all about work. It's about enjoyment, and having fun, and experiencing the joys that life does have to offer. So let's take this 2 weeks to a month to just kind of remind ourselves of that. It's also an opportunity for new investors. How every new generation, whenever new generation comes along, the way our economy is constantly shifting with new paradigm shifting technologies emerging, how someone retires and invests changes with that. So it used to be pensions, and a strong dollar and salary and factories way back in the day. Now it is investing and indexing markets. Because there are 3 types of incomes, which have a cycle between one another, where it used to be just active income. So a strong wage, strong salary from factories and pensions. And now it is more a combination of passive income and portfolio income, where it's just kind of a business-based, a salesperson-based, just consume, buy economy, which drives shares up. And the shareholders are the ones who benefit off of that system and their portfolio income right here. So you can look up 3 different types of income. And right now, it is the passive income. So owning your own business. We're seeing a shift to the e-economy, online economy. And this economic disruption, this economic deleveraging period is going to really force people into kind of a career renaissance. They're going to have to get really creative and start, employing themselves with an entrepreneur mindset rather than just relying on some corporation or some company that doesn't care about their employees and could very well go belly up or bankrupt, any day. So just something to consider, because this chaotic time period definitely requires a creative mindset moving forward. So what I'm doing, podcasting, that's going to be very popular. Design, anything to do with art and engineering, agriculture. We're going to see a decline in certain industries and a dramatic rise in other industries. So if you're one of the disenfranchised people that is unemployed, research what places are hiring. I know that Amazon is hiring in the process of hiring 100,000 people, I believe, to keep up with demand. So I think supply chains will be replenished very soon, and the panic is very predictable. That's predictable human behavior. I always try to keep at least a month or two stocked of water and canned food. I think that's a smart thing to do, as well as toiletries and cleaning products. Just always have a month or two stocked up, so you don't have to go out and panic buy. But that's we have Black Friday. That we have a holiday for panic buying. So it is expected to see that kind of behavior. It's sad to see, it's sad to see so many people are disenfranchised. I think, the unemployment numbers are 20%, but I mean, in reality, they could be very well 25%. So a quarter of people out of work within a month. Now let's go to the Dow Jones numbers. So to put it in perspective, a month ago, the Dow was at 30,000 points at an all-time high, and just a couple years ago, it had an all-time high of 20,000 points. So just in the span of 5 years, it has climbed over 10,000 points, and just in the span of 1 month, it has fallen back down below 20,000. It is at 19,000 points at the moment. In 2009, it hit its low of 74 or 7,000, roughly 7,000 points was its low in 2009. And its peak just a month ago was 30,000 points. And now it is back down to 19,000 points. Ray Dalio just said that corporate debt losses are going to be $4 trillion, and private could be upwards of 2 trillion. So service industry, hotels, restaurants, airlines. So all those people are going to have to be bailed out. So it's going to be at least a $6 trillion recession, if not more. And so if you're a new investor, this is an opportunity. This really is. So if you're sitting on a little bit of money and you're wondering what to do, as far as, retirement and future, look for a low of 7,000 points that we can see happened in the 2000 crash, the 2009 crash, and the 1980s. That they all got down to 7,000 points. And once the Dow gets down that low, if you start investing a little bit of money, consistency, it's all about consistency. Over time, it will compound, and you'll be able to retire in the future. Because, again, with Moore's law, technological progress does not slow down regardless of what's happening during economic crashes or social disruptions. It really has to be, a civilization canceling event for technological progress to slow down. And this is not that. So technological progress will continue. And in 10 years after this kind of lost decade period, we will see technological advancements such as the cure to HIV and AIDS, cures to cancer, cures to Alzheimer's. We're going to see more people being lifted out of poverty, and all sorts of different sorts of progress we'll see in the next 10 years. With artificial intelligence coming about, we will see solutions to global warming, and education. So this is going to disrupt many industries, and many industries won't make it out of this deleveraging depression period. That being said, there will be new industries being born out of this period, because humans are creative, and during times of chaos, our creativity tends to rise. So that our creativity combined with technology, I think technological progress will provide a lot of solutions to a lot of our current problems that we see today in the future, in the next 10, 15, 20 years. We will see just the technological exponential growth curve just skyrocket. All electric vehicles, all self-driving, Hyperloop, high-speed trains, better public transport, better infrastructure. If we handle this deleveraging right through direct stimulus, I think we need to provide at least $2,000 checks to the people that are most disenfranchised by something like this, until a vaccine is created that's safe and rolled out to the masses, and then we can kind of settle in back to our daily routines, our normal lives. But right now, I suggest people start to get creative with their interests, and buy a domain, get a URL, buy a URL, get a website, make a website, and then put your art online, whatever it is. Put your service online, whatever that may be. If you're an engineer, just whatever your interests are, try to take this time and pursue those right now, because I think the solution to all these problems comes from our creativity. So that's about it for the economic side. So 333,000 total confirmed cases. Vaccine trials are underway in Seattle here right now. Epidemiologists are saying that a vaccine at the earliest will be rolled out early 2021. I mean, if I'm really hoping at the end of this year, with all the money being thrown at research and development, I mean, someone can only hope. They're also working on treatment drugs. I know that's looking promising to just help treat the coronavirus if you get it, because I know ventilators are low for the most severely infected. So a treatment drug would definitely help the supply of ventilators. But right now is not the time to panic. Instead, we should remain diligent and smart and come together and support one another. Keep supporting local businesses that you would normally go to, buy their gift cards, send them money, Venmo them money, donate money to them as much as you can, while still living comfortably, and definitely practice social distancing, at least for 2 weeks, for us to get a handle on the situation and for supply chains to replenish from the panic buying. So hopefully everyone is stocked up that did panic buy. I'm sure they're sitting on a throne of toilet paper right now and wondering why they did that. And instead of investing in toilet paper, I would suggest investing in a Vanguard ETF. An ETF tracks a market index, which contains stocks or bonds of an industry. So I suggest tracking the Dow Jones, looking for the bottom of the Dow, which should be around below 10,000 points, around 7,000 points at the bottom. And then we'll see a slow recovery back up to record-breaking highs, 30,000, 40,000 points in the coming years. So if you're a young person that has a little bit of cash, I wouldn't suggest just having it in a savings account. I would suggest investing it. I would look into Vanguard and their ETFs that track market index such as the Dow Jones, because in the future it will rise again to 30,000 and record-breaking highs, because people need things and they will always need things. So short term, it's very, very chaotic, I know, and it's a very scary time. But during scary times, we cannot be fearful. We have to remain steadfast and diligent. So just take that into consideration. And I'll try to be better at these weekly podcasts. This coronavirus is just spreading rapidly, and I just wanted to kind of just take a step back and really just kind of assess it objectively, rather than panicking initially. So I think if you're smart about it, if you follow the right protocols, something like this that has happened many times throughout history, as long as you do the right things, you should be just fine. So thank you so much for watching. I am Starchild, and I hope to catch you again next week. All right, bye.